The December wind cut through the streets of Manhattan like a blade, carrying with it the scent of roasted chestnuts and the distant sound of Christmas carols. Fifth Avenue glittered with holiday lights, store windows displaying luxuries most could only dream of. Against this backdrop of excess, a figure sat hunched on the cold sidewalk outside Bergdorf Goodman, his weathered hands clutching a cardboard sign that read, "Hungry. Anything helps. God bless." Marcus Thompson, 53 years old, pulled his thin jacket tighter around his shoulders. His beard, once neatly trimmed during his days as a high school English teacher, now grew wild and unkempt. His eyes, however, still held a spark of intelligence that years of hardship hadn't quite extinguished. He watched the parade of designer shoes pass by, most never glancing down, some actively avoiding eye contact. 3 years ago, Marcus had a home in Queens, a daughter in college, and a career he loved. Then his wife, Sarah, died suddenly from an aneurysm. The medical bills, combined with his grief-induced depression, created a downward spiral he couldn't escape. He lost his job, then his home, and finally, contact with his daughter Emma, who was too angry and hurt by his descent into alcoholism to stay in touch. Now he'd been sober for 8 months, but the damage was done. He was invisible to the world rushing past. A black Mercedes S-Class pulled up to the curb, its engine purring quietly. The rear door opened and a man stepped out, his tailored charcoal suit and camel hair overcoat speaking of wealth, but worn with an ease that suggested he'd never needed to prove anything to anyone. Khalid Al-Mansour, 45, moved with quiet confidence, his dark eyes taking in the scene with an observer's attention to detail. Before we continue, we'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city and country in the comments below. And if you enjoy stories that touch the heart and surprise the mind, hit that subscribe button. We have many more incredible tales coming your way, and you won't want to miss a single one. Khalid had built his empire in technology and renewable energy, transforming his family's oil wealth into something he believed could change the world. But tonight, he wasn't thinking about his latest solar farm project in Arizona or the board meeting tomorrow morning. He was thinking about his father, who had passed away 6 months ago, and the last thing he'd said to Khalid, "Wealth that doesn't serve others is just organized greed." As Khalid walked toward the department store entrance, his assistant Ahmad trailing behind with shopping bags, he nearly stepped over Marcus. Nearly, but something made him stop. Perhaps it was the book lying next to the homeless man, its cover worn but cherished. The complete works of Rumi, Khalid's favorite poet. "You read Rumi?" Khalid asked, his slight Arabic accent coloring his English. Marcus looked up, surprised anyone had spoken to him. "Used to teach him, before everything fell apart." "What's your favorite passage?" Marcus didn't hesitate. "The wound is the place where the light enters you." His voice was rough from disuse, but carried the cadence of someone who'd once commanded a classroom. Khalid smiled. "Mine too." He gestured to the book. "May I?" Marcus handed it over carefully, as if it were made of glass. Khalid opened it, noticing the margins filled with notes in small, precise handwriting. Annotations about symbolism, historical context, teaching notes. This wasn't just a man who read. This was a scholar fallen on hard times. "What's your name?" Khalid asked, sitting down on the cold pavement beside him, ignoring Ahmad's shocked expression. Marcus Thompson. "I'm Khalid. Tell me, Marcus, what happened? How does a teacher of Rumi end up here?" Something about Khalid's genuine interest, the way he sat at eye level rather than standing over him, made Marcus want to answer honestly. For 20 minutes, as shoppers streamed past and Ahmad stood awkwardly nearby, Marcus told his story. The loss, the grief, the mistakes, the descent. He didn't make excuses or ask for pity. He simply told the truth. Khalid listened without interrupting, his dark eyes never leaving Marcus's face. When the story ended, he was quiet for a long moment. "I lost my father this year," Khalid finally said. "Cancer. He built everything we have from nothing. Came to America with $300 and a dream. He taught me that success means nothing if you don't lift others as you climb." He paused. "Marcus, I'm going to make you an offer, and I need you to really hear me. I don't want to just give you money. That's easy, and it doesn't solve anything. I want to give you an opportunity." Marcus's hands trembled slightly. "I don't understand." "I own several companies. One of them is an educational nonprofit that develops curriculum for underserved schools. We need someone who understands literature, who can write and teach, who knows what it means to fall and wants to rise again." Khalid pulled out a business card. "We have a residential program for employees who need housing while they get back on their feet. Clean, safe apartments. And we have counselors, support systems." "Why would you do this?" Marcus's voice cracked. "You don't know me." "No, But I know Rumi, and I know anyone who carries that book and can quote it from memory has something valuable to offer the world. Khalid stood, extending his hand. Come with me, right now. We'll get you a hotel room tonight, and tomorrow we'll start the process. If after a week you decide it's not for you, no hard feelings, but give yourself a chance, Marcus. Take the light that's trying to enter through your wound. Marcus stared at the extended hand. Part of him wanted to refuse, to say he didn't deserve it, that he'd just fail again. But another part, the part that used to stand before students and talk about courage and second chances, made him reach out. Their hands clasped. Okay, Marcus whispered. Okay, I'll try. Ahmad helped gather Marcus's few belongings while Khalid made phone calls, arranging everything with the efficiency of a man used to making things happen. Within an hour, Marcus was in a suite at the Four Seasons. The first hot shower he'd had in months, washing away more than just dirt. The next morning, wearing clothes Khalid had arranged to be delivered, Marcus met him at the office of Al-Mansour Educational Foundation in Midtown. The building was modern and bright, filled with young people working on computers, their energy infectious. Khalid introduced him to Sarah Chen, the foundation's director. Khalid told me about your background, Sarah said warmly. She was in her 40s, with kind eyes behind stylish glasses. We've been struggling to find someone who can help us develop a high school literature curriculum that actually engages students from difficult backgrounds, someone who understands both the subject and what it means to struggle. Over the next several weeks, Marcus threw himself into the work with an intensity he hadn't felt in years. He wrote lesson plans, developed reading lists, created discussion guides. But more than that, he began visiting the schools where the curriculum would be used, talking to students who reminded him of his younger self, full of potential but surrounded by obstacles. Khalid checked in regularly, never hovering but always available. They'd have coffee and discuss philosophy, education, life. Marcus learned that Khalid's father had been illiterate until age 30, that he'd worked 3 jobs to put himself through community college, that he'd faced discrimination and hardship, but never let it define him. Your father sounds like an incredible man, Marcus said one afternoon. He was, and he would have liked you, Khalid smiled. He used to say the best investment is in people, not stocks. 3 months in, Marcus had been sober for nearly a year. He'd found an apartment through the foundation's program, had started attending support group meetings, and had even begun writing a book about teaching literature to at-risk youth. But there was still one piece missing. His daughter, Emma Thompson, now 25 and working as a social worker in Boston, had built walls around her heart. When Marcus finally gathered the courage to call her, she hung up. He wrote letters she didn't answer. He understood, carried the guilt like stones in his pockets. But it hurt nonetheless. One evening, Marcus was working late at the office when Khalid appeared with dinner from a nearby restaurant. You're going to burn out, Khalid said, setting down the bags. Says the man who works 16-hour days, Marcus replied, but he was grateful for the company. As they ate, Khalid asked gently, have you heard from your daughter? Marcus shook his head. She won't talk to me. I don't blame her. I abandoned her when she needed me most. No, grief abandoned you both. There's a difference. Khalid was quiet for a moment. May I make a suggestion? We're opening a new learning center in Boston next month. I need someone to oversee it. Make sure the curriculum is being implemented correctly. It's a 3-month assignment. Marcus looked up sharply. Boston? Where Emma lives? Coincidentally, yes. Khalid's expression was neutral, but his eyes sparkled with intent. You're not subtle, Marcus said, but he was smiling. My father used to say subtlety is overrated when someone needs help. The Boston assignment began in April, when the city was shaking off winter's grip and cherry blossoms painted the common in shades of pink and white. Marcus threw himself into the work. But every evening he'd walk past the social services building where Emma worked, hoping to catch a glimpse of her, never quite brave enough to go inside. Until one day, fate intervened. Marcus was leaving a meeting with school administrators when he saw a young woman arguing with a man on the street corner. The man was clearly agitated, possibly high, and the woman was trying to de-escalate the situation with professional calm. Even from a distance, Marcus recognized her. Emma had her mother's auburn hair and fierce intelligence. The situation was deteriorating. Without thinking, Marcus approached. Emma, he said quietly. She turned, and her face went through a series of emotions: shock, anger, pain, confusion. Dad, what are you? The agitated man suddenly lunged, reaching for Emma's bag. Marcus stepped between them instinctively, taking a hard shove that sent him sprawling onto the pavement. The man fled as onlookers called for help. Emma knelt beside him, her professional training overriding her personal feelings. Are you okay? Did you hit your head? I'm fine, Marcus said, though his palms were scraped and bleeding. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. I'm trained for this." Her voice was tight, controlled. Then, quietly, "What are you doing in Boston?" "Working. I'm with an educational foundation now. We're opening a center here." He stood slowly, declining the hand she offered, not wanting to presume. "Emma, I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want you to know I'm sober. I'm trying to rebuild my life. And I think about you every single day." She looked at him, really looked at him, seeing the clean clothes, the clear eyes, the dignity that had been missing for so long. "You're really sober?" 13 months. Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I wanted to hate you. It was easier than missing you. I know. I'm so sorry, Emma, for everything." They stood there on the busy Boston street, years of pain and loss hanging between them. Then Emma did something neither expected. She stepped forward and hugged him. Marcus held his daughter for the first time in 3 years, both of them crying openly as pedestrians streamed past. "Coffee?" Emma finally asked, pulling back and wiping her eyes. "I have an hour before my next appointment. I'd like that very much." The coffee lasted 2 hours, then dinner. Then weekly meetings that became twice weekly. Emma was cautious, rebuilding trust carefully, but she was willing to try. She told him about her work, about the mother she still grieved, about how angry she'd been when he disappeared into his addiction. "I felt like I lost both parents that year," she said one evening. "Mom died and you just vanished into someone I didn't recognize. I know, there's no excuse, but I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." "What changed? How did you find your way back?" Marcus told her about Khalid, about that December night, about the opportunity that had saved his life. Emma listened, fascinated. "I'd like to meet him," she said. "This man who gave you a second chance. I think that could be arranged." The meeting happened a month later when Khalid came to Boston to check on the Learning Center's progress. Emma was nervous, expecting some distant billionaire with a savior complex. Instead, she found a warm, thoughtful man who asked her questions about her work and listened intently to her answers. Over dinner at a small Italian restaurant, Khalid shared stories about his father, about immigration, about understanding loss and rebuilding. "Your father speaks very highly of you," Khalid told Emma. "He carries guilt about missing your graduation, your achievements, but I hope you know how proud he is." Emma glanced at Marcus. "I'm starting to see that." "Can I be honest with you?" Khalid leaned forward. "When I met your father, I was in a dark place myself. I'd lost my father, was questioning everything about my life and purpose. Helping Marcus wasn't charity, it was mutual salvation. He reminded me why my father built what he built, what wealth is actually for." "I don't understand," Emma said. Khalid smiled. "We teach what we need to learn. I needed to remember that success without service is empty. Your father taught me that by accepting help, by having the courage to try again. He saved me as much as I saved him." Marcus stared at Khalid, realizing something he'd never quite understood. "That first night, you didn't just see a homeless man, did you?" "No, I saw someone who reminded me of my father, someone who'd fallen but still carried wisdom, someone worth investing in." Khalid paused. "And I saw someone reading the same poetry that got me through my father's death. Sometimes the universe puts people in your path exactly when you both need it." The dinner ended with Emma hugging Khalid, thanking him with tears in her eyes. As they walked out into the warm Boston evening, she linked her arm through her father's. "I'm glad you're back, Dad." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." 6 months later, Marcus stood in front of a packed auditorium in Brooklyn, his book, The Wound and the Light, Teaching Literature to Transform Lives, open in his hands. The audience included teachers, social workers, educators from across the country, and sitting in the front row, Khalid, Emma, and Sarah Chen. "This book exists because someone saw me at my lowest point and chose to see potential instead of a problem," Marcus began, his voice steady and strong. "It exists because Khalid Al-Mansour understood something profound, that we're all one bad day away from needing help, and we're all one good day away from transformation." He spoke about his journey, about loss and recovery, about the students he now worked with who carried their own wounds. He quoted Rumi extensively, that worn book still his constant companion. When he finished, the applause was thunderous. People lined up to buy books, to share their own stories, to thank him. But the moment that mattered most came later, in a quiet corner, when Emma hugged him tight. "Mom would be so proud," she whispered. "I hope so. I'm trying to live in a way that honors her memory." Khalid approached, and Marcus clasped his hand firmly. "I don't have words adequate to thank you." "You already thanked me," Khalid replied. "Every student you reach, every life you touch with your work, that's thanks enough. Besides, I told you, you saved me too. You reminded me who my father was. who I wanted to be. What your father said about wealth serving others, you live that every day. I try. It's what he would have wanted. Khalid smiled. Actually, I have something to tell you. The Foundation's board voted unanimously to make you Director of Curriculum Development. It comes with a significant raise and the ability to expand the program nationally. Marcus felt Emma squeeze his arm excitedly. Khalid, I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept. Say you'll help us reach more students. Train more teachers. Spread what you've learned. Khalid's expression was serious. You've earned this, Marcus. Not because I gave you a chance, but because you took it and ran with it. You did the hard work. I accept, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. And I'll spend the rest of my career making sure no student feels invisible, the way I felt on that sidewalk. That's exactly what I hoped you'd say. As the evening wound down and people drifted away, Marcus stood alone for a moment in the empty auditorium, looking at the stage where he'd just spoken. 2 years ago, he'd been homeless, broken, certain his life was over. Now he had his daughter back, meaningful work that changed lives, and a friend who'd seen his worth when the world had looked away. The wound had indeed been where the light entered. Outside, Khalid was saying goodbye to Emma, promising to have dinner with them both next time he was in Boston. Ahmad waited by the car, patient as always, holding open the door. Marcus caught up to them. Khalid, wait. I need to ask you something. Khalid turned. Anything. That night, on Fifth Avenue, you said you didn't want to just give me money, that it doesn't solve anything. But you'd already decided to help me, hadn't you? Before I said a word about Rumi or teaching. Khalid was quiet for a long moment, then smiled. My father used to stop and talk to every homeless person we passed. Every single one. He'd ask their name, their story, treat them like they mattered. When I asked him why, he said, because they do matter. And because one day that might be us. When I saw you, I saw my father's voice in my head, telling me to stop, to look, to see the person, not the circumstance. So it wasn't about the book. The book confirmed my instinct. But no, I'd already decided to help before I saw it. Something about you, Marcus, even at your lowest. There was dignity there, a light that hadn't quite gone out. Khalid extended his hand one more time. Thank you for not giving up. On yourself, on the world, on the possibility that things could get better. They shook hands, two men from vastly different backgrounds who'd found common ground in loss, poetry, and the belief that every person deserves a second chance. As Khalid's Mercedes pulled away into the Manhattan night, Marcus stood with Emma under the streetlights, watching the taillights disappear into traffic. He's an extraordinary man, Emma said. Yes, he is. But you know what the real gift was? It wasn't the job or the apartment or even the opportunity. What was it? Marcus looked at his daughter, his eyes clear and full of love. It was that he sat down beside me on that cold sidewalk. He didn't stand over me or throw money and walk away. He sat down, at my level, and talked to me like I was human, like I mattered. That's what saved me. Everything else followed from that one moment of recognition. Emma nodded, understanding. In her work, she'd seen how much dignity mattered to people who'd lost everything else. How sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is simply acknowledging their humanity. Come on, Dad, she said, linking her arm through his. Let's go home. Home. The word that had once meant loss now meant possibility. Marcus walked through the Brooklyn streets with his daughter, thinking about all the students he'd work with tomorrow, all the lives he might touch with the curriculum he'd developed, all the wounds where light might enter. On Fifth Avenue, past where Marcus once sat invisible, the holiday lights would soon return. Another December, another season of giving. But somewhere in Manhattan, in Boston, in schools across the country, the real gift was already spreading. The understanding that we're all connected, that wealth means nothing without service, and that sometimes the person you help saves you right back. Marcus still carried that worn copy of Rumi everywhere, but now when he opened it, he saw his own story in those ancient words. The wound had been the place where light entered, and that light now shone on everyone he touched, a ripple effect of compassion that had started with one man choosing to stop, to see, to care. In the end, Khalid had given Marcus something much greater than money or a job. He'd given him back himself, his purpose, his daughter, his future. And Marcus, in turn, had given Khalid back his father's legacy, the reminder of why any of it mattered. Two men, one moment, infinite impact. That's the power of recognizing someone's humanity when the world has looked away. That's the light that enters through our wounds, if we're brave enough to let it in. And that's a story worth telling.